In this video, we're going to look at solving quadratic equations. These equations we'll be solving are quadratic equations in vertex form. Quadratics can be written in three different forms: vertex form, general form, and factorised form. But today, we're going to be looking at solving quadratic equations in vertex form. We have three quadratic equations here that I want to go through solving. Let's look at the first one. X minus 2 squared minus 4 is equal to 0. Now, we'll start with the flowchart and go through what is being performed on X to get to our answer. Now, if we look at the bracket, we can see that first of all, we are subtracting 2. Then we are squaring the result. And then we are subtracting 4. And then we get an answer of 0. So if I want to work backwards from our answer back to X over here, the first thing I'm going to do is add 4. And then the inverse of squaring is the square root. So I'm then going to take the square root of my answer, and then I'm going to add 2. And that way I will get back to my value of X. So doing that algebraically, we have X minus 2 squared minus 4 is equal to 0. Now the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to add 4 to both sides. So I've got X minus 2 squared minus 4 plus 4 is equal to 0 plus 4. Now, minus 4 and plus 4 will cancel out, and I've got X minus 2 squared is equal to 4. Now, the next thing I've got to do to both sides is take the square root. So I'm going to take the square root of X minus 2 squared. And I have to take the square root of 4. Now, when I take the square root of 4, I actually have two solutions. The square root of 4 is positive 2 and negative 2. So I'm now left with X minus 2 is equal to both positive 2 and negative 2. There are two solutions here. And that means that X is equal to positive and negative 2 plus 2, because I'm adding 2 to both sides. Now, this means that for this quadratic, there are actually two solutions. The first solution is positive 2 plus 2. The second solution is negative 2 plus 2. Now, positive 2 plus 2 gives us 4. And negative 2 plus 2 gives us 0. So the two solutions to this equation are X is equal to 4 and X is equal to 0. Now let's look at the second example. Now the first thing that we're doing to X here is we're adding 1. Then we are squaring. And then we are subtracting 4. And the answer that we've got here is 5. Now to work backwards, I'm going to add 4. I'm going to take the square root of the answer, and then I'm going to minus 1. Now, in the previous example, I didn't go through the flowchart, and this time we will. So we're going to say here we've got 5 plus 4 gives me 9. The square root of 9 is positive and negative 3. And when we subtract 1, we're going to get either positive 2 or we're going to get negative 4. So let's do that algebraically. So we've got x plus 1 squared minus 4 is equal to 5. Now, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to add 4 to both sides. So I've got x plus 1 squared minus 4 plus 4, and that's equal to 5 plus 4. Now, minus 4 and plus 4 will cancel out, and I'm left with x plus 1 squared is equal to 5 plus 4, which gives me 9. Now, we're going to take the square root of both sides. I'm going to take the square root of x plus 1 squared and the square root of 9. Now, that means I am now left with, because the square root and the square will cancel each other out, and I'm left with x plus 1. X plus 1 is equal to, now the square root of 9 is positive 3 and negative 3, which means that x is equal to positive and negative 3 minus 1. Now again, I have got two solutions. So x can either be 3 minus 1 or negative 3 minus 1. So one solution is 2 and the other solution is negative 4. Again, we have two solutions here. Now, let's look at this next example. Okay, so first of all, looking at the equation, the first thing we do to x is subtract 5, then we square, and then we minus 3. So when I am backtracking, I'm going to add 3. I'm going to take the square root of the answer, and then I'm going to add 5. Now, so they're our inverse operations we're going to perform. So we have x minus 5 squared minus 3 is equal to 7. Now, the first thing we have to do here is we need to add 3 to both sides. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add 3 to the left-hand side, and then I'm going to add 3 to the right-hand side. Now, minus 3 and plus 3 will cancel out, and I'm left with x minus 5 squared is equal to 7 plus 3, which is 10. Now I need to take the square root of both sides. So the square and the square root will cancel out, and I'm left with x minus 5. Now, what's the square root of 10? Now, I could use my calculator now and get an answer such as 3.12. But we're going to work with exact answers here. And when we work with exact answers, we keep our answer in what we call surd form. And surd form means that I'm going to keep my answer in terms of the square root. So my answer here is going to be the positive and negative square root of 10. So the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to add 5 to both sides. So I'm going to add 5 here and add 5 here. So the minus 5 and plus 5 will cancel out, and I am left with x is equal to the positive and negative square root of 10 plus 5. Now, I'm going to break my answer up into the two separate answers. So x on the one hand will be the positive square root of 10 plus 5, or the negative square root of 10 plus 5. Now, these answers here are what we call the exact answers. If I wanted to, I could also come up with an approximate answer, which would be using decimal points, plus 5. The next answer would be negative 3.16 plus 5. Now to work that out, and I'll write my answers up here because I can write it right down the bottom. So 5 plus 3.16 is equal to 8.16. And I could write this as 5 minus 3.16. That's another way to write it. Okay, so 5 minus 3.16 will be 1.84. So they're my approximate answers. Here are my exact answers here. Here I have my approximate answers. But the important thing to remember about quadratic equations is they can have two solutions. In all of the examples we've looked at here, all examples had two solutions. Later on, when you do some more work on quadratics, you'll be learning how you can have equations that only have one solution and some equations that have no solution, but we'll save those for later. I hope this helps you with solving quadratic equations in vertex form.